Hello everyone. This video is on the subject of Fox's recent firing of Bill O'Reilly. Typically when I do these videos, I write out much of what I have to say ahead of time so you hear the most polished product of which I'm capable. But today I'm going to try just talking. I think this is a good subject for that, and I'd like to see how it goes, and what you all think of it. So, Bill O'Reilly. He is out at Fox. Basically, he was fired. I think I did what most other people did. We heard about it. I mean, there were a few who celebrated, a few who lamented immediately. But the majority of people said, okay, you're accusing him of something serious. What's your evidence? What do you have? And what we know is the following. We know that he is currently out at Fox. We know that there were several either lawsuits or claims brought up by a handful of women over the course of the past several years, alleging harassment, and that Fox paid out, or Bill, or both, paid out settlements. And the settlements were in the tens of millions, which I think to an ordinary person, they might say, oh, well, they paid out a lot of money. I wonder if this is true. But that's it. We have some secondhand stories. We have some third-hand stories, but we don't seem to have any actual evidence. There's no video, there's no audio, there's no picture, there's nothing. There's just stories and some settlements that have been paid out. Now, I think most people may not realize how these settlements typically work. Somebody can allege anything at all. And depending on how much they're asking for, it may make more sense to just write them a check to go away. They hire an attorney. The attorney's going to take a significant percentage of that money, but the attorney's going to work basically on spec, knowing that, okay, well, this person is going to get paid something, and I'll just take my cut out of that. And for a very large organization like Fox, or for a very well-known man such as Bill O'Reilly, sometimes it just makes sense to write somebody a check to make them go away and to attach a confidentiality agreement to it to make certain that, one, your reputation's not dragged through the mud in public, or two, that you just don't waste 3 times as much money defending yourself in court. It probably sounds a little bit backwards, but there's a lot of frivolous lawsuits that go on. Now, do we know that these lawsuits were frivolous? No, we don't. We don't know that the harassment claims were frivolous. But we also don't have any evidence that these alleged events actually happened. We just have a couple of individuals who got paid out, and that's all. So we don't have any evidence. And we also have a story that, again, we don't have direct evidence for this, but it's another story. And if we're going to consider the harassment claims, which are just stories at this point, we don't have them as factual events, we have to consider a second story that we've heard recently, which is that Rupert Murdoch, who is the owner of Fox, has a couple sons, and that his sons pushed for Bill O'Reilly to be thrown out, and that the sons were pushed because they were pushed basically by their wives. Their wives said, well, I don't like this. You need to get that man out. And the boys were kind of almost henpecked into doing that, and they kind of just crumbled under the pressure and then went ahead and forced Dad to do it. And Dad, at this point in time, Rupert Murdoch I think he's in his 80s or 90s. I mean, he's probably getting to the end of his life. And his sons are going to take over the network when he dies. So if that is what actually happened, it's a pretty serious situation for Fox, and I don't like their odds. So let me talk a little bit about Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly seemed to be, at least on television, a genuine simple man. Not a simpleton. He was intelligent. He has a Harvard education, and he was a teacher at one point in time. I have read some of his books. I quite enjoyed them. I know Martin Dugard does a lot of work on them, but I've read Killing Jesus and Killing Patton, and I have Killing Reagan. And I found those books to be good. They weren't earth shattering, but they're written in a very unique style that is captivating and that does tend to introduce people to subjects within history that perhaps they were not taught in school. Um, if he's getting millions of people to read, or even tens or hundreds of thousands, I think he should be commended on that, especially because he's not getting them to read fiction. He's getting them to read and understand history. And as you know from spending any time at all on my channel, that is a subject that is very near and dear to my own heart. I want people to understand and learn from history, and Bill O'Reilly does a good job of that. Now, I had a brush with Bill O'Reilly last year, and I figured I would tell this little story. So, my father is a fan of the O'Reilly Factor when it was on television. Now it's off. And I decided for Father's Day I would get him the tickets to the Boulder Fresher tour that O'Reilly does with Dennis Miller, and that I would get him the backstage passes so he could go ahead and meet Bill and Dennis Miller. So we're standing in line and we're waiting, and we ended up being last in line. So we're just waiting and waiting as people go into this small room with a backdrop and they take a picture, and they get a handshake from Miller, and O'Reilly does not shake hands. Apparently he tends to get sick because he does a lot of these tours. So what ends up happening is he just kind of fist bumps people. So we finally get to our turn. They give us our book and our DVD that Miller did that were signed. And, my father shake hands with Miller, goes over, fist bumps O'Reilly. O'Reilly was interesting. He's a very large man. My father is around 6'4", and O'Reilly was at least an inch or two taller than him. So he was a very, very large human being. And I get the handshake from Miller. He goes, "Hey, Andy, how you doing? It's so good. Thank you for coming here and enjoying the show. Please stand. Let's take a picture." And so I kind of turn away from Miller, and I go to do my fist bump with Riley, and Bill O'Reilly is glaring a hole right through me. I have no idea what he thought I was doing that was inappropriate, but apparently he was doing that, or that's just his natural state. So he kind of offered his fist to me for a fist bump, and I said, "No thanks, Bill, I'm good." And he just kind of shrugged and kind of took his posed for his picture, and then we were on our way. So yes, he was in real life, as he tends to be on the set, a very stern man. But despite that, despite that kind of glaring at me and whatnot, I think Bill deserved better. If you take a tally of what he's done for Fox News, having that #1 rated cable program, providing, quite literally billions of dollars worth of revenue with his reporting, the way that he approached his business, doing it in a very old-fashioned way. He got sources. He didn't just report on mere speculation just because he wanted to be the first one out there. And he was careful with what he said and what he did. He didn't just kind of throw things out there and hope that it meant ratings. He tried to do it the right way. And I think that he deserved better because of that. Now, however, we get to something very, very interesting. Bill O'Reilly has decided not to take things lying down. If you've followed him on Twitter recently, you've noticed he's mentioned he's got a new venture, and you've also seen on May 2nd, he actually called the news media morons. And I believe he recently had something where he was very irritated with Dan Rather. So before he would come out, and he'd hold people to task, whether they be on the left or the right. While he was right of center himself, he was not an extreme ideologue. He did go ahead, and he seems to be coming out and not taking this behavior lying down. I think the man feels unjustly tarred and feathered due to this, and I think he's going to come out swinging for quite a while. And what's very interesting is this new venture is designed around his name brand and the power of the internet. He's doing his own podcasting. He's looking at putting some video on there. I listen to some of the podcasts, and while they're not perfect, he's brand new at this. He's never done these before. But he is quite wealthy. He has the ability to hire the people to do it who know how to do it very well. And he's got a brand. and that brand is very, very valuable. So I'm very interested to see what Bill O'Reilly does and how hard he takes it to the other networks. And this kind of brings me back to Fox. We're now hearing rumblings. Whether or not they're true, I don't know, but we're hearing rumblings that Sean Hannity might be out. And while I'm not a huge Hannity fan, it does seem to me like maybe that story of the Murdoch wives, so to speak, kind of pushing their husbands to do things and get rid of people they might not personally like, if that's coming to fruition, men like Bill O'Reilly, who can, on a relatively limited budget, really disrupt the major news networks, especially. I mean, let's take this for a second. Let's assume Bill O'Reilly is unbelievably successful doing it his way on, from the comfort of his own home in a nice little studio he built for himself, probably for a couple $1,000s, maybe getting a couple people on a staff to help him out, and he puts out 45 minutes to an hour worth of product every day. You could, if he's unbelievably successful and takes viewership away from Fox, you could be looking at a situation where other successful anchors say, forget it. I'm simply not going to go ahead and deal with the potential or the possibility of having to pay out these 7 or 8 figure settlements for people who are going to unjustly accuse me of things that I have not done. And if that happens, this could just be one more nail in the coffin of the mainstream media, and it was all because people decided to shove out a man who deserved better. So that is what I've got to say about the Bill O'Reilly situation. It will be very interesting to see how things turn out. Maybe there is evidence that I'm unaware of, or that all of us are. And if there's more evidence, I reserve the right to change my mind. But as of right now, I think I'm coming out quite firmly on the side of Mr. Bill O'Reilly, and I wish him luck. I'm looking forward to what he has to do. So thank you very much for listening today. If you like this, please like and subscribe to the video, and let me know what you thought. If you'd like to hear me do more of these, I'd be glad to do so. Thank you.